The coffee machine at Hargrove and Ellis had been broken for 11 days, and nobody had fixed it because nobody wanted to be the one to tell Mr. Aldrich Hargrove that the machine he'd personally selected from some boutique supplier in Portland was in fact a beautiful piece of garbage. Jenna Whitfield knew this because she was the one who'd been quietly running to the cafe downstairs every morning at 7:15 to buy a black coffee, a flat white, and an Americano with 1 sugar, so that by the time the senior partners arrived at 7:30, their cups were already waiting on their desks like magic had happened overnight. She'd been doing it for 8 months. Out of her own pocket, mostly. That was the kind of job legal assistant at Hargrove and Ellis turned out to be. The kind where your actual job description was a loose fiction, and the real job was anticipating what nobody asked for out loud. Jenna didn't mind, mostly. The pay was decent, the building was warm, and she could take the 6 train from the apartment she shared with her younger brother, Caleb. 19, enrolled in community college, trying to get his life straight after 2 years of not trying at all. The commute was exactly 31 minutes door-to-door if she hit the transfer right, and she usually did because she'd spent the first 6 months timing it. Predictability was its own kind of safety. Jenna had learned that the hard way. She was standing at the printer on a Thursday afternoon, collating deposition exhibits for a case that had been dragging on since before she was hired, when she heard the elevator open and felt, rather than saw, the shift in the room's energy. It was subtle. The way conversations didn't exactly stop but dropped half a register. The way Sherry at the front desk sat up a little straighter, without appearing to notice she was doing it. Jenna turned. The man who stepped off the elevator was in his mid-30s, maybe, with the kind of controlled stillness that didn't belong in an office full of nervous billing hours and ringing phones. He wore a charcoal suit that wasn't showy but cost more than Jenna made in a month. She'd gotten good at estimating that kind of thing without meaning to. Dark hair, sharp jaw, and eyes that moved through the room the way a chess player looks at a board. Not randomly, but cataloguing. 2 men followed him. Neither smiled. Jenna looked back at the printer, output tray, exhibits 1 through 47. She stacked them with careful hands and did not look up again. "Rafael Caruso," Sherry whispered, appearing at Jenna's elbow with the urgency of someone delivering intelligence. "He's here to meet with Mr. Hargrove about the Meridian acquisition. Don't make eye contact." "Why?" Jenna asked, because she was constitutionally incapable of not asking things like that. Sherry gave her the look that meant she'd explain later, but also probably wouldn't. "He's connected." Like, connected. "The acquisition is just the public part." Jenna glanced up. Rafael Caruso was across the room now, shaking Mr. Hargrove's hand with the relaxed ease of someone who'd shaken 1,000 hands and found them all mildly disappointing. His 2 companions had spread themselves into positions near the main corridor and the elevator bank, not obviously guarding anything, but not obviously not either. She recognized the arrangement. The spacing. The way the one near the corridor kept his weight on his back foot. Something cold moved through her that she recognized as muscle memory. She finished collating the exhibits and carried them to her desk. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Jenna spent it doing what she always did, drafting correspondence, managing the calendar, answering the phone with the right degree of warmth and efficiency. She brought water to the conference room once and was thanked by Mr. Hargrove and ignored by everyone else, which was exactly how these things went. She was almost finished for the day, shutting down her computer, when she heard it. A voice, low and clipped, from the alcove behind the supply room. A narrow space with a single window and a dying ficus that everyone pretended was a design choice. She'd passed by it 100 times. People used it to make calls they didn't want overheard. "He doesn't leave the building. You understand me. Caruso doesn't make it to the car." A pause. "I don't care what it takes. Santos set this up. We finish it tonight." Jenna kept walking. Her footsteps didn't change rhythm. She turned the corner into the main corridor and stood very still for 3 seconds, her hand resting flat against the wall. Santos. She knew that name. She hadn't heard it in 2 years. But it lived in the part of her memory she kept sealed off and never examined too closely. Marco Santos. The man her father had owed money to. The man whose people had come to collect when her father couldn't pay and had taken something else instead. Had broken her father so thoroughly that he'd spent the last year of his life looking at the floor when he talked. Jenna had left Philadelphia with Caleb the week after the funeral. She'd changed their last name. She'd come to New York and learned to be invisible and gotten good at it. She hadn't thought about Santos in months. She thought about him now. Her mind ran through it fast. What she'd heard, what it meant. Someone in this office, or using this office, had just coordinated a hit on a man currently in the conference room with her boss. She didn't know if Rafael Caruso was a good man. She knew nothing about him except what Sherry had said and what she'd observed in 20 minutes across a carpeted room. but she knew what it looked like when someone was walking towards something they didn't see coming. She'd watched her father do it for years. Jenna took the long route back to her desk. She sat down, opened her drawer, and took out the notepad she used for phone messages. She wrote 4 words and a number, tore off the sheet, and folded it once. Then she walked to the conference room door and knocked twice. Mr. Hargrove opened it with an expression that meant this had better be important. "I'm so sorry to interrupt," Jenna said. "Mr. Caruso, you left something at the front desk when you checked in. I thought you might need it before you headed out." She held out the folded note. Rafael Caruso looked at her. His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes went very alert. He reached out and took the note from her hand, his fingers not quite brushing hers. "Thank you," he said. His voice was measured, even. Jenna nodded, apologized again to Mr. Hargrove for the interruption, and left. She was at the elevator, coat on, bag over her shoulder, when she heard footsteps behind her. Not aggressive, deliberate. Mims, Rafael Caruso stopped beside her at the elevator bank. His 2 companions were still visible down the hall, but neither had followed. "You work here, it wasn't a question." Jenna pressed the button for the lobby. "Legal assistant," she said. 8 months. You didn't find anything at the front desk?" "No." The elevator doors opened. She stepped in. After a half-second pause, he followed. His companions stayed in the hall. That was interesting, she thought. The doors closed. "What did you hear?" he asked. Jenna looked straight ahead at the brushed steel doors. "Someone in the north alcove," male voice, "said you don't leave the building." Mentioned Santos setting it up. She felt him go still in the way that truly still people go still. Completely, without any of the micro-movements that fill up ordinary silence. "Santos," he repeated. "Marco Santos. That was the name." Another pause. The elevator descended. The doors opened at the lobby. Jenna stepped out onto the marble floor and stopped near the security desk, where the guard was absorbed in his phone and not watching them. "I know it because of my father," she said, keeping her voice low and even. "He's gone now. Santos had people who made his last years very difficult. I recognized the name, and I didn't want it connected to someone else getting hurt if I could do something about it." Rafael Caruso studied her face. He had the kind of attention that felt like a physical thing, not threatening, but total. Like he was reading a document and wanted to make sure he understood every word before turning the page. "Why didn't you call the police?" "Because the police couldn't help my father either." He was quiet for a moment. "That's a very specific kind of wisdom. It's a very specific kind of experience." People moved past them in the lobby. Other tenants leaving for the evening, a delivery person, a woman walking a dog that wasn't supposed to be in the building. Normal Thursday evening in Midtown Manhattan. "Walk with me," Rafael Caruso said. "I need to get home to my brother. 5 minutes. There's a coffee shop on the corner. I think you've just done something significant, and I'd like to understand why." Jenna looked at him. She'd done this calculation before, the one where you weigh risk against risk, and there's no option that feels clean. She was good at it. 5 minutes, she said. The coffee shop was narrow and warm, with acoustic tiles on the ceiling and jazz playing low under the noise of the espresso machine. They sat at a table near the window, and Rafael Caruso's 2 companions positioned themselves outside on the sidewalk with the rehearsed casualness of people who'd done this many times. He ordered 2 coffees without asking her preference, which she noted. Then he looked at her. "Tell me about your father." Jenna wrapped her hands around the mug when it arrived. "He ran a small logistics company in Philadelphia. 5 trucks, 12 employees, nothing complicated. Santos's people approached him about moving certain things through his routes. My father said no, twice. The 3rd time, they stopped asking and started applying pressure. By the time I understood what was happening, he'd already signed whatever they needed him to sign. They had him for 3 years before he died." She paused. Heart attack. But really it was the 3 years. Rafael Caruso didn't offer condolences, which she appreciated. "And you? I took my brother and left. Changed our name. Came here. You've been hiding. I've been surviving." She met his eyes. There's a difference, though it doesn't always feel like one. Something shifted in his expression. Not much, but enough. "Santos is one of 4 lieutenants working under a man named Victor Ashworth," he said. His voice was quiet, factual, like he was reading from a report he'd memorized. "Ashworth runs a network of financial operations throughout the Northeast, some legitimate, most not. I've been building a case against him for 2 years through channels that are complicated." He chose the word carefully. "Santos believes I'm a threat to those operations." "He's right. Is he right that you should be stopped?" "Probably a matter of perspective." Jenna looked at him. "That's not an answer." "No," Rafael Caruso said, and something that might have been humor lived briefly at the edge of his mouth. "It isn't. The honest answer is that I'm not an innocent man, miss." He stopped. "Jenna," she said. "Jenna, I'm not innocent." But neither is what I'm trying to end, and I've spent a significant portion of my adult life making sure those two facts don't cancel each other out. He paused. Santos's people killed my brother 4 years ago. Luca was 26. He'd come to me to help him get clear of some debts he'd run up. He'd gotten involved with people he didn't understand, and by the time he came to me, it was too late for the clean version. Jenna felt the familiar pull of a grief that recognized another grief. I'm sorry, so am I, every day. He looked at her steadily. You warned me because of your father. I warned you because I know what it looks like when someone's about to walk into something they don't see coming. She paused. I couldn't save my father, but I could do something tonight. Raphael Caruso was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, one of his companions was speaking quietly into a phone. The people in that alcove, he said. Could you identify them? One voice. I didn't see a face, but you'd recognize the voice. Yes. He looked at her with the kind of careful assessment that had nothing aggressive in it. It was more like reading, she thought, like trying to understand the full weight of a thing before deciding how to carry it. What you overheard put you in a position I wouldn't wish on anyone, he said. If Santos's people learn what you did tonight, and they may, because they have people in buildings like yours who notice things, then your invisibility is gone. I know, and you did it anyway. I didn't think it through that far, she admitted. I just wrote the note. Most people don't even do that. He leaned forward slightly. Jenna, I'm going to be honest with you, because it's the only thing that makes sense under these circumstances. What you overheard is useful. You are useful, not because I want to use you, but because you have information and context that could close a significant gap in the case I've been building. But getting involved further means risk. It means exposure. It means the life you've carefully built here becomes complicated in ways that won't be comfortable, or, Jenna said, Santos's people connect me to what happened tonight and my life becomes complicated anyway, and I don't have anyone on my side. Yes, he said, that's exactly right. She looked out the window. The evening traffic moved past in the amber light, yellow cabs and ride shares and a woman on a bike with grocery bags hanging from the handlebars. My brother, she said, his name is Caleb. He's 19. He doesn't know any of this. Our father's situation. Why we really left Philadelphia. I've protected him from it. He'd be protected. I can make that happen. You don't know him. He's stubborn and he doesn't take direction well and he thinks he's smarter than everyone around him, which is sometimes even true. A pause. He's the only family I have, then he'll be protected because you're protected, Raphael Caruso said. That's not a negotiation point. That's a given. Jenna looked back at him. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't yet. He said it without defensiveness. I'm a stranger who you've known for. He checked his watch. Approximately 40 minutes. But I'll tell you what I can tell you. The federal attorney in the Southern District who's been building this case is a woman named Patricia Holden. She is unambiguously clean, unambiguously real, and she's been waiting for 2 years for the right piece of evidence to move. I've been feeding her what I can. What you know about your father's situation may be exactly the link she needs between Santos's street-level operations and Ashworth's financial infrastructure. My father's company was in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is one of the main arteries of Ashworth's network. What your father was asked to move, when, through whose routes, if you know any of that, it connects nodes that we haven't been able to map from this end. Jenna's hands were still around the mug. The coffee had gone lukewarm. I know more than I've ever told anyone. I thought you might. She didn't sleep that night. She lay in her bed in the apartment she shared with Caleb, who was, she verified at 11:15, safely asleep with headphones on and a half-eaten bag of chips beside the bed, and stared at the water stain on the sea-ceiling that had been there since they moved in and that she'd meant to report to the building manager 8 months ago. The business card Raphael Caruso had left with her sat on the nightstand. It had a name and a number on it and nothing else. She'd turned it over 3 times before putting it down. She'd spent 2 years becoming someone who didn't take risks. Someone who woke up and went to work and came home and made sure Caleb ate dinner and went to class and didn't make the choices their father had made. She'd built a life out of careful habits and deliberate smallness. And tonight she'd handed a folded note to a man she didn't know because something in her couldn't do the other thing. Couldn't hear those words in the alcove and keep walking like she hadn't. She thought about her father. Not the last version of him, the one who stared at the floor, but the earlier one. The one who'd coached her soccer team when she was 9 and called her his best player even when she wasn't. The one who used to drive her to the library on Saturday mornings and wait in the parking lot with the radio on because he said libraries were where the good stuff happened. She thought about how he hadn't been a bad man. He'd just been a man who got into something he didn't understand fast enough and then couldn't get out. She thought about Luca Caruso, 26 years old, and what Raphael had looked like when he'd said his name. At 5 in the morning, she picked up the business card and called the number. He answered on the second ring, which told her he hadn't slept either, or he had people monitoring calls on that line at all hours. She supposed both could be true. "I want to talk to Patricia Holden," Jenna said. "Directly, before I say anything else to anyone." A pause. "I can arrange that. Today, this afternoon. I'll need a few hours." "Fine." She sat up in bed, pushing her hair back. "And I want it documented. Whatever I provide, whatever I know, it gets recorded and attributed, and I'm protected from anything that comes back on the record about my father's company. He was coerced. I want that acknowledged. That's a reasonable request. Holden will want the same thing, and Caleb doesn't know anything about this until after." Agreed. Jenna looked across the room at the framed photograph on her dresser, her and Caleb and their father at the Jersey Shore, maybe 10 years ago, all three of them squinting into the sun and grinning like people who didn't know yet what was coming. She kept it because she wanted to remember the before, the one where her father was still himself. "One more thing," she said. "Go ahead." "Last night in the office. The person in the alcove, the one who made the call. I'm going to remember that voice. When the time comes, I'll need to hear it again to identify it. And whoever it is, they work in that building, probably in my firm, or close to it." She paused. "I need to know that when this is over, it actually ends. I don't want to spend the rest of my life waiting for something to unravel." Raphael Caruso was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was different. Not softer exactly, but more considered. Like he was speaking from some place closer to the bone. "My brother believed it would end," he said. "He trusted me when I said I was handling it, and I didn't handle it fast enough, and it cost him everything. So when I tell you that I intend for this to actually end, not managed, not suppressed, but finished, I need you to understand that I'm not saying it because it's reassuring. I'm saying it because I know what it costs when it doesn't." Jenna exhaled slowly. Okay, he repeated. The meeting with Patricia Holden took place in a conference room at the Southern District Federal Building, which was nothing like the offices at Hargrove and Ellis. Fluorescent lighting, institutional furniture, a whiteboard covered in initials and arrows that someone had half erased. Holden herself was in her early 50s, with silver-streaked hair, pulled back, and reading glasses she kept taking off and putting on. She had the focused energy of someone who'd been working the same problem for a long time, and was very accustomed to having that work be difficult. She listened to Jenna without interrupting. For 40 minutes, Jenna talked about her father's company, about the specific contracts Santos's people had forced him to take, about the names she'd overheard, the routes, the dates she'd written in a notebook that she'd kept for 2 years in a shoebox under her bed because she hadn't known what to do with them, but couldn't bring herself to throw them away. When Jenna finished, Holden set down her pen and looked at her. "How confident are you in these dates?" "My father kept records. He was compulsive about it, old school, everything in a ledger. I have them. I took them when we left Philadelphia because I didn't know what else to take." Holden glanced at Raphael, who was seated to the side and had said almost nothing. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" "Because I was 19 when my father died and I had a 17-year-old brother, and I was scared and I didn't trust anyone." Jenna kept her voice flat, factual. "I'm less scared now. What changed? I heard Santos's name again and realized that hiding wasn't actually keeping us safe. It was just delaying it." Holden was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The ledgers from your father's company, combined with what Mr. Caruso has already provided, would give us the financial paper trail we've been missing on the Ashworth side. We've had the structure, but not the movement. Your father's roots were the conduit." She paused. "I can offer you and your brother full protection. Formal documentation that your father's involvement was coerced. Witness status, which means immunity from anything related to the family business, and the person in the alcove at Hargrove and Ellis. We'll open a separate inquiry into Hargrove and Ellis. It's possible Ashworth has deeper reach into that firm than any of us knew." Holden looked at her steadily. "I won't sugarcoat this. The next few weeks will be disruptive. You'll need to stay somewhere secure. Your brother will have to be briefed, at least partially, I know." Jenna folded her hands in her lap. "I'll handle Caleb." Handling Caleb meant sitting across from him at the kitchen table that night, with 2 mugs of tea between them and saying, without preamble, "I need to tell you something about Dad, and about why we really left Philadelphia, and I need you to let me finish before you say anything." Caleb put his phone face down on the table, which was how she knew he understood the register of what was coming. He was 19 and stubborn and sometimes exhausting, and she loved him in the fierce, tired way you love the last person left in your immediate world. He let her finish. When she was done, he was quiet for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. Someone in the apartment above them was watching television. You've known all of this for 2 years, he said finally. Yes, and you didn't tell me because you were 17 and you'd already lost Dad, and I didn't want you to spend the next few years looking over your shoulder the way I was. He looked at the table. That wasn't your call to make. No, she said. It wasn't, I'm sorry. Another silence. Jenna waited. What do we do now? He asked. We stay at a place Raphael's team has arranged for the next few weeks. We cooperate with the federal attorney. We give them what they need and then we get to stop running. Caleb looked up. Raphael, you're on a first-name basis with the mob guy. He's not. She stopped. It's complicated, Caleb said. I got that. He picked up his mug. Is he going to get us killed? No. Are you sure? Jenna thought about what Raphael had said that morning on the phone. The difference between reassurance and truth. I think he's probably the person most motivated in the world to make sure that doesn't happen. Caleb considered this. Okay, he said. Okay. The safe house was a townhouse in Carroll Gardens with a good lock on the door and a small backyard that Jenna sat in the first morning, drinking actual good coffee from a French press that had been left on the kitchen counter, watching sparrows fight over something on the fence. Raphael came by that evening. He brought takeout, Thai food from a place 2 neighborhoods over, and sat at the kitchen table while Caleb interrogated him with the particular relentlessness of a 19-year-old who had decided that being intimidated was a choice and had opted out. Jenna watched Raphael answer the questions, patiently, directly, without condescension. When Caleb asked something genuinely sharp, she saw the flicker of what might have been approval in Raphael's expression before he answered it. Later, after Caleb had retreated to the back bedroom with his laptop, Raphael and Jenna sat at the table with cold takeout containers between them and the particular quiet that settles after a long day of bracing for things. He's going to be fine, Raphael said. He's going to be furious for a while and then he'll be fine, Jenna corrected. Those are different things. He's angry at the situation. Not at you. He's a little at me. Yes, Raphael conceded. A little, but he came with you. Jenna looked at the table. When this is over, what do you actually do? Go back to whatever it is you do. He was quiet for a moment. I've been building toward walking away from most of it for a long time. The Ashworth case was the last thing. The thing I couldn't leave undone. He paused. After this, I don't know. Luca used to say I should do something boring. He thought boring sounded like heaven. He sounds like someone who'd been through a lot. He had. Too much. Raphael looked out the kitchen window at the dark backyard. He deserved boring. So do you, maybe. He looked at her. Maybe. They worked with Holden's team for 16 days. Jenna provided the ledgers, walked investigators through the routes, identified photographs. Twice she was brought in to listen to recorded calls and confirmed the voice from the alcove. It belonged to a junior partner at Hargrove and Ellis who, it turned out, had been on Ashworth's payroll for 4 years and hadn't been particularly subtle about it once people started looking. On the 17th day, Holden called. We moved this morning, she said. Victor Ashworth and 29 members of his organization, including Marco Santos. The charges are comprehensive. The evidence is solid. This is going to hold. Jenna was sitting on the back steps of the townhouse with the French press. The October sun was thin but present. My father's record, she said, documented its coerced cooperation. It's in the official record. He was a victim of the organization. That's how history will reflect it. A pause. You and your brother are free, Jenna. Whatever that looks like for you. She sat there for a long time after she ended the call. She thought about the woman she'd been 8 months ago, getting on the 6 train with her coffee and her careful routines, believing that if she stayed small enough, the past would eventually forget her address. She thought about her father in that ledger, writing down every transaction in his meticulous hand, because he was a man who believed in records, in evidence, in the idea that the truth had to live somewhere, even when it couldn't be spoken. He'd been right. It had lived somewhere, and it had mattered. Caleb found her on the steps 20 minutes later. He sat down beside her with a bowl of cereal that he was eating with the focused energy of someone who'd just woken up. It's over, he said. It's over. He ate cereal. Good. A pause. Can we go home, to an actual apartment we picked? Not a safe house? Yes. Can I put up posters? You can put up whatever you want. Good, he said again. He bumped his shoulder against hers once, brief and definitive, the way he'd done since he was 12 years old, and affection was something you expressed by accident. Good. 3 weeks later, Jenna met Raphael for coffee at a place in the West Village he'd suggested. An ordinary cafe, not a corner table with sightlines to the exit, just a table by the window where the light was good and the coffee was strong, and the noise around them was the ordinary noise of a city doing its ordinary thing. He looked, she thought, like a man who'd set something down after carrying it a long time. Not lighter exactly, but less braced. How's Caleb? He asked. He put up approximately 40 posters and has decided to transfer to a 4-year school upstate. He thinks I don't know he's been researching it for 6 months. She wrapped her hands around her mug. He's going to be okay. And you? Jenna considered the question. A week ago, she'd walked to the office, her actual job, which she'd been on leave from and then returned to with a vague explanation that HR had accepted without pressing. And she'd ridden the elevator without her pulse spiking. She'd made coffee runs downstairs and sat at her desk and done her job, the real version of it, and at 5 o'clock she'd left on time for the first time in 8 months. I woke up last Tuesday and didn't check the street from the window before I went down to get the mail, she said. It took me until I was already downstairs to notice I hadn't done it. Raphael looked at her. That's significant. It felt significant. She paused. I used my real last name when I called my father's old insurance company to close out an account. Whitfield. I said it out loud into the phone to a stranger and nothing happened. What did you expect? Honestly. I'm not sure anymore. She looked at him. What about you? Boring life, like Luca said. Something in his expression was different from the first night in the alcove's aftermath. Not guarded, exactly, but more present, like a man who'd stopped spending all his energy on the peripheral vision and had some left over for the thing directly in front of him. I'm consulting on a legitimate basis for a firm in the financial district. It turns out there are legal uses for knowing how money moves in complicated ways. Who knew? It's a shorter commute. The corner of his mouth moved. Luca would find that hilarious. Jenna smiled. A real one, the kind that came without thinking. I think he'd find the whole thing hilarious, actually. If you told him how it started, a legal assistant and a folded note and a broken coffee machine. The coffee machine was broken. For 11 days, it was a whole thing. Raphael looked at her for a moment. Thank you, he said, for the ledgers, for trusting me enough to show up. Thank you for being worth it. They sat in the cafe while the city moved past them outside the glass, and the October light came through the window at the angle that meant the afternoon was getting on, and neither of them was in any particular hurry to be somewhere else. Not being in a hurry to escape, Jenna thought about her father's ledgers, packed now in an archival box at the federal building, properly labeled and preserved. Evidence. Record. Proof that something had happened and that it mattered. She thought about the Tuesday she'd walked to the mailbox without checking the street. She thought about Caleb upstate, researching transfer applications he hadn't told her about, making plans he believed were secret. She thought about a note, folded once, passed across a conference room threshold. She'd spent 2 years making herself small enough to disappear. She hadn't disappeared. She'd just been waiting without knowing it for a moment when the thing she knew how to do turned out to be exactly the right thing. The coffee was good. The light was good. Outside, the city was just being the city, indifferent and enormous, and full of people building their ordinary lives around whatever it was they'd survived. Jenna Whitfield drank her coffee and stayed.